Hello and welcome to My Baseball History, presented by the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum and Baseball Library in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, Dan Wallach, and I'm the Executive Director of the museum. My Baseball History is a long-form interview podcast where each episode I'll talk to someone new who has some sort of association to the game of baseball. No matter who I talk to, we'll talk about how they fell in love with baseball, how their career started, and how they got to be where they are today. On today's episode, I spoke with Joey Mellows, who you may know on Twitter as @BaseballBrit. Joey is a cheerful British chap who loves baseball and set out on a mission to learn as much about the sport as he possibly could. He started out by going to games in Korea, but has seen baseball games in many countries all over the world and taken multiple long road trips across America. He's done this to educate himself, but his travels have also had the effect of promoting interest in baseball in the UK and all over the world. At the time of this podcast, he has 46.5 thousand followers on Twitter. And if you follow him there long enough, you'll learn that he gets excited about a lot of things, but he really genuinely loves a few. Barbecue, bunt doubles, collecting baseball cards, Zach Greinke, Tulane University, and the Korean Baseball Organization. And you may think, well, there's no Major League Baseball on TV right now for Joey or for anyone to watch, so of course he loves the KBO. But no. Joey's been a fan of the league since he discovered it years ago. He lived in Seoul, Korea between 2014 and 2018 and fell in love with baseball thanks to the KBO and its passionate fans. In fact, he set up his Twitter account while sitting in Jamsil Baseball Stadium watching a game. That's Joey's favorite place in the world to watch a game. And that's saying something because he's been to well over 100 different stadiums across the globe. From major leagues to minor leagues to independent leagues to international. Jamsil Stadium was completed in July of 1982 and hosted the baseball events of the 1988 Summer Olympic Games in Seoul, where baseball was a demonstration sport for the 7th time. That means that while medals were awarded, those medals weren't quote-unquote official and didn't count in the respective nations' medal totals. The United States beat Japan in the final 5-3 behind the bats of Tino Martinez, Robin Ventura, Mickey Morandini, and Ed Sprague. On the mound, Jim Abbott, Andy Bennis, Charles Nagy, and Ben McDonald led the way. The host nation of South Korea made it to the third place game of those 1988 Summer Games, but lost to Puerto Rico 7-0. Jamsil Stadium went through renovations in 2007 and 2012 and is known as Two Families Under One Roof because it's the shared home stadium of both the Doosan Bears and their KBO rivals, the LG Twins. The LG Twins just happen to be Joey's favorite team. They were one of the charter members of the KBO, which formed in 1982. The Twins were initially known as the MBC Blue Dragons, but when the franchise was acquired by the LG Corporation in 1989, they were renamed the LG Twins. The following year, in 1990, the Twins won the Korean Series for the first time. Then they did it again in 1994. The MVP of the Korean Series in both years was Kim Young-soo, whose number 41 is one of only 2 numbers to have been retired by the organization. In this episode, we covered lots of ground. Joey tells us the most daunting thing about starting from square one when learning about a new sport as an adult. We find out what it's like to have a stadium full of fans screaming numbers at you while you're the person trying to decide which hat the ball is under on the Jumbotron. We learn the 3 simple things that Major League Baseball can do to increase interest in the sport long term, besides, actually playing games. And we hear the story of what it was like to be inside the Tokyo Dome during the game when word got out that Ichiro would be announcing his retirement from Major League Baseball. With all of that information and much, much more coming at you, it may be helpful to follow along with the episode's liner notes on our website. You'll still be able to enjoy the interview without the extra help, but sometimes when I'm listening to things like this, I really like to go in depth. So I've provided some photos and links to give you all a better understanding of the things Joey and I are discussing. Those liner notes can be found at the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum website, which is online at www.shoelessjoejackson.org. If you want to follow along, head over to the museum's website and click on the podcast tab at the top. You can also just head to shoelessjoejackson.org/shoelesspodcast and it will take you right there, where you can click on the Joey Mellows episode or any past episode you may want to catch up on. Everything in the liner notes goes in chronological order of how we talked about them in the interview, so you should be able to easily keep your place as you listen. At the end of the episode, I'll explain how you can answer a trivia question on Twitter to win a pack of the 1919 Black Sox 25-card set that's available in the museum's online store, and an enamel pin which is modeled after the 1914 B18 felt blanket card featuring Joe Jackson. Those pins are hand-numbered and limited to 356 in honor of Joe's career lifetime batting average, so stick around until the end of the episode for that. The winner of last week's trivia contest was Brett Fahrenkopf, who is on Twitter at BMF1314. After listening to the Brian Bernardoni episode of My Baseball History, Brett knew that the first night game ever played at Wrigley Field was the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League All-Star Game on July 1st, 1943. Brett, shoot me a DM on Twitter at Shoeless Podcast with your mailing address, and I'll send you your prizes. But now, here's my interview with the very fun, very British Joey Mellows. You grew up 75 miles southwest of London. You went to the London School of Economics and then went on to get a master's degree at the University of Cambridge. You've taught at a boarding school and you love soccer. But if you had to pick the most British thing about you, what do you think it would be? Because those things are all pretty British.
Oh, this is easy. I drink tea every morning when I wake up. It's the first thing I do. I go downstairs and I put the kettle on and I take the dog out and I come back in and the kettle's boiled and I make my tea. It takes 3 to 4 minutes for it to brew. And that's how I start every single day when I'm in England.
Lots of questions. What kind of tea?
Yorkshire tea, always.
Beautiful. And what kind of dog?
I have an American Cocker Spaniel, or as I am in America, just a Cocker Spaniel.
Yeah, you could just call it a Cocker Spaniel here.
Yeah, she's black and white, Ava. She's great, yeah.
Cute. So you taught in Seoul, South Korea, which is 9 hours ahead of England. How did that time difference lead you to falling in love with baseball?
It's quite simple. So I moved over in 2014 and I tried to keep watching soccer. And with the time difference, all the soccer games were on at midnight, 1 a.m. And I did that for a year and it was affecting really how I was performing at work. And I was, tired and grumpy a lot and snapping. And I thought that was unfair on the people I was teaching. So I stopped watching soccer and started going to bed earlier. And I replaced it with a baseball game I saw in Japan in April 2015. And then I went back to Korea and, there's 5 channels showing every single game in the KBO on every night. So I began watching baseball instead. That's cool. The reason.
Yeah, that's cool. I used to play soccer and I feel like it's pretty straightforward, and somebody who's watching a game for the first time can pretty easily pick up like what's going on. They can see the scoreboard and they can understand what the numbers mean and what everything is. Was it daunting when you first started trying to learn about baseball? Because there's just so much nuance to the game and so many stats and so many numbers where you're just like, what does all that mean?
No, it was. Like in Japan, I went to my first game with my mum and dad in Osaka, saw the Oryx Buffaloes play the Chiba Lotte Marines. And yeah, one of the first things I kind of noticed was I didn't understand anything on the scoreboard. And normally with a soccer game, you can tell what the score is all the time. It's very easy and clear to see. And even now, you go to a baseball game and the runs, which actually tell you what the score is, are in front of the hits and the errors. Mm-hmm. And, it's not always easy for a non-baseball fan to actually determine what the score is of a game, even if they're watching one.
Yeah.
If they arrive late or whatever. So, yeah, the numbers were quite daunting, but I was lucky that I had a couple of friends that I worked with, Andy Brown, the artist that I know you've spoken to, and a guy called John. And we began collecting Korean baseball cards together, and I'd get the students I taught to translate what the Hangul letters meant in terms of the statistics, and we together kind of helped each other learn the various statistics and numbers in a foreign language, and it was fun.
Yeah, well, don't feel bad, because honestly, one of my biggest gripes about baseball and watching baseball games in person is sometimes it's hard to find the score of the game. I think many stadiums don't display it properly or easily, and you've got to search for it. It's like that is the one thing you need to know is what's the score, and you shouldn't be forcing your fans to search for the score.
I've not thought about it really since that first year I got into baseball, but you're right. Yeah, it should be easier to see when you walk into a ballpark, I think, but particularly because so many people pop to the loo anyway, and then they they come back and they've missed a home run or something. So yeah, perhaps MLB, if you're listening.
Oh, they're listening.
Make it a bit simpler, a bit clearer. Yeah, it'd be helpful in growing interest in the game.
So this is now your second trip to the United States to watch baseball games? Third. Okay. So the first one was
2016.
16. Okay.
I came out on my own to watch Shin-Soo Choo, and I went from the East Coast to the West Coast. Saw my first ever Major League Baseball game at Yankee Stadium. England were playing Iceland in the 2016 European Championships. We lost 2-1. But I'd booked a tour. I'd watched that documentary because it was available on Netflix in Korea, Ken Burns Baseball.
Yeah.
And I know, I'm sure that's not a perfect documentary, and it's
It's pretty close.
Yeah, but for me, I downloaded every episode, and I used to fall asleep in Korea with my laptop by the bed, and I would choose a random episode of Ken Burns Baseball, and I would fall asleep to that, very slow, kind of sentimental, romanticized narration of baseball history.
Yeah.
And I was, the Yankees were a team. Billy Martin in particular was someone I was fascinated by. The Texas Rangers were always on Korean TV because of Shin-Soo Choo.
Mm-hmm.
So I began learning the rules of baseball because the broadcast was in English and the time difference meant the game was on in the morning. I watched every single Rangers game I could for 4 years. And I know Billy Martin was one of the first Texas Rangers managers.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a colourful history with the Yankees and George Steinbrenner, and the Yankees were featured so prominently in the Ken Burns documentary with 27 World Series wins. Of course they would be.
Yeah.
So that was where I started. It was perfect really to see Shin-Soo against the Yankees, but he was injured that game, so I didn't. I just saw the Rangers play the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So how long was that trip? Was that just a quick trip just to watch those games?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it felt like it was a long trip.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't one of my longest holidays, but it was, in hindsight, it was maybe 18 days.
Okay, so definitely a good chunk of time.
Yeah, it took me east to, and then I went to Texas and then out to the All-Star game in San Diego that year.
Cool.
Couldn't afford tickets, had no idea they'd be that expensive, and ended up watching a Giants-Padres game a few days after the All-Star event. But yeah, that was my first one.
Cool. So when you came back in 2018, that was a little bit of a longer trip. You went to 59 games in 74 days. Are those numbers correct? Or
I was with Andy. I think I went to 75 games.
Okay.
Over that. Was that 2018?
2018.
Yeah. I definitely went to 75 last summer.
Wow.
But about 41 of those were independent baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an outsider, and independent baseball's outside as well. And I read a book called Wild and Outside by Stephen Fatsis, who I think he's now with the Washington Post. I think.
Okay.
He's a big Scrabble player, and that really caught my imagination. For the American Association, as it's now known, the independent league that goes from Texas up to Winnipeg in Canada, almost in a north straight line.
So by the end of the trip in 2018, you had come to the conclusion that you liked the atmosphere better in minor league parks. Do you still find that to be the case?
I like the mixture. There's something incredibly exciting about going to a major league ballpark and watching the very best players in the world play baseball, but I also love going to, my next ballpark is the Brewers, and then I'll be with the Round Rock Express in AAA down in Austin. So I like the combination of the big leagues and the minor leagues and the small towns and the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's all baseball at the end of the day, so I'm going to enjoy it wherever it's played.
What made you decide to quit your job and come do this? I mean, there's a lot of things you could quit your job and do.
I had nothing else going on really. So yeah, it's not like I had a lot of other exciting options to kind of, put my energy towards. So I've always wanted to travel and road trip. We grew up in the UK watching a lot of American movies from a very young age, and, that kind of romantic notion of the road trip and, getting in the car, and our country's so small compared to yours. So it's hard for us to kind of understand. Like, we drive anywhere for 8 hours and we're going to be in a different country.
Right. So
just being over here and the scale and scope of things. Fundamentally, what I'm doing at the moment is a road trip, and it just happens that the end of each day gets me in a place where there's a ball game taking place. So, yeah, it's. I think the movies really got me into this, and I've been a huge movie fan for all my life. So, yeah, what I'm doing now combines that element, and then the baseball element from falling in love with it in Japan and Korea. What's
your favorite movie that has a road trip in it?
That's a tough question. My favourite movie, full stop. I see you've got it on your shelf here, is The Big Lebowski. I'm not sure there's too many road trips in that movie. One. There's a lot of bowling.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Planes, Trains and Automobiles. I remember watching like John Candy because I was a kid, and when he was in a lot of movies when I was growing up, and I always enjoyed him. But yeah, there's no real road movie that, stands. Easy Rider, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Those two guys just on a motorbike, and that was pretty cool.
There's a road trip in Field of Dreams.
I didn't see Field of Dreams till only about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. So yeah, that was kind of a fairly recent one for me.
This year's road trip is more extensive than last year's, let's say. 2019, you're planning on going to 162 baseball games.
Yeah.
What are you doing, man?
I don't know. Oh boy, sounds like my mum. I'm just adventure and travel and learning and more about baseball and meeting people and seeing more of America. It's a combination of things, really. I have no idea what I'm doing. People ask me why, and I used to give them an answer, but I'm not really sure myself anymore. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it.
I talked to somebody. I'll give you the quote. I'll let you try and decide who you think said this. The funny thing about Joey is that he's not really doing anything. He's just watching baseball games, and somehow he's got 27,000 Twitter followers. Who do you think said that?
Andy Brown?
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard this, but Andy B is an artist. So the Baseball Brit has over 27,000 followers on Twitter at the time of this recording. And I think I can kind of pick up on the distinction between the Baseball Brit, the character, and Joey Mellows, the person. Do you make a distinction between those two things?
Not really, because I'm, Baseball Brit is just a silly name I came up with to try and connect with other British baseball fans.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into baseball, I wanted to learn as much as I could and ask questions and things, but the thought of I couldn't speak to Korean baseball fans because I didn't speak the language, or Japanese baseball fans, and the thought of interacting with American baseball fans immediately I found too daunting for the sorts of silly questions I had. So I came up with just Baseball Brit just because it would be an easy way for other British baseball fans to kind of connect.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't intimidated to ask other British baseball fans because we're all outsiders to America's pastime or whatever. So yeah, that's why I set it up. And I never really used Twitter until the end of end of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I had an account set up with Andy when we used to go to these ballparks in Korea, and I think I set up in 2015. And you should just send like silly messages to the Yankees saying, "Oi, have you seen this painting by Andy?" So it wasn't until the end of 2017 when I began to take it seriously. I think I had about 34 followers, and then I just started thinking, let's try and grow the UK community. And there was a few teams that weren't covered with a UK account, so I sort of organised that and made sure that all 30 teams were represented, and liaised with people and said this account's been inactive for a couple of months, and perhaps would anyone like to start a new Reds account, which is what happened recently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite organised, so I just tried to organise that, really.
Yeah. Why do you care if baseball comes to the UK? Like, why does it matter to you that people in Europe love baseball?
I don't really. Like, at the start of the trip, it was about growing interest in the UK because Major League Baseball was coming over for the first time with the Yankees and Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
But, the more the trip's kind of taken place, I don't care where you're from. I just want to show baseball in the most positive light possible. And whether you're where I was randomly born or whether you're, 6,000 miles away on a different continent, if you see what I'm posting and you think baseball looks fun and you're curious to learn more about it, then that's all I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that you didn't want to ask American baseball fans certain questions because you felt either intimidated by them or you didn't want to seem ignorant. What were some of the things that you were curious about that either you have the answers to now or you're still hoping to ask someday?
Yeah, it's like really simple stuff to begin with, obviously. Why does the starting pitcher always seem to have to go 5 or 6 innings minimum? Why don't they just bring in a pitcher for 2 innings and then a pitcher for 3 innings? And
so you were way ahead of your time because the Tampa Bay Rays have started asking that question.
I just didn't understand why it was so fixed on, there's 30 teams, why are they all doing the same thing? There must be ways that, you can innovate.
Yeah. And
just because it's the way it's always been done, that shouldn't be unchallenged. And because I was naive and just ignorant, I was like, why? And the win statistic, I was like, why is this a thing? This seems so ridiculous. The pitcher's probably responsible for maximum 40% of the overall, score.
Yeah.
If you factor in defense and the fact another pitcher comes in probably in the 7th or 8th or 9th inning anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact the hitters have to get runs for them to even, get a win, which they have no control over, particularly in the AL.
Absolutely.
So the win statistic and the fact that it was always on baseball cards, because I began buying them to try and learn about, the various players with the teams. And then stuff like war. What does war mean? Just simple questions like that.
Yeah. Your goal last year was to write a book about the health of baseball in the United States. Is that still a goal of yours? And
no, that failed. Yeah, because I went back to teaching, and I didn't have time to write that book up about, and I didn't have enough information because I just had a lovely time.
Mm-hmm. So when that was your goal, how were you like taking the temperature of the health of baseball in America?
Well, essentially, I had a little dictaphone, and I used to go around and speak to people that were working in Major League Baseball or independent or minor league clubs, like general managers, play-by-play people, season ticket holders, and just basically ask them very simple questions about, how do you feel baseball can be improved? Are you happy with the way it is now? Why do we keep hearing about pace of play? If there's one change you can make, what would it be? It was just really basic questions like that. I was just trying to learn about what Americans thought about baseball in 2018 as it was last summer.
So what are some of the things that you think baseball can do to improve? I mean, you are on a podcast about with bat flips in the name. So I know bat flips are pretty commonplace in Korean baseball, and they're even like celebrated as an art form. But in America, they're so frowned upon. Like, why do you think that is, first of all?
I mean, I don't know why Americans don't enjoy emotion in baseball, because they enjoy emotion in basketball and in American football. Mm-hmm. It's commonplace in soccer, even in the MLS here. I have no idea why baseball is an exception to the rule of celebrating something that you've done well.
And it's just the hitters, because a pitcher can show emotion. When a pitcher gets a huge strikeout, he pumps his fist, and that's not frowned upon. So when a hitter hits an enormous, like, momentous home run,
a giant dong,
as one would say, how can that player not celebrate? It's so silly to me.
Yeah, I mean, if someone asked me how can baseball improve, it would be, there'd be about three simple things. One, it needs to be more accessible. And that means that all the silly rules at the moment with TV deals and people being blacked out within the home market and people in Iowa not being able to watch 6 MLB teams even if they're 500 miles plus away, that needs to change. If you want to grow the sport and you want to get young people more involved, because I know baseball is an aging sport in terms of its average spectatorship, you've got to make sure people stumble across it more easily. You've got to make it look more fun. And how can we make it more fun? By allowing and, kind of sharing, I guess, emotion and celebration. And if that includes bat flips or pitchers celebrating strikeouts, then so be it. But I think accessibility, more emotion. And then the third thing I think is it just needs to be made a little bit more affordable. I was at the Cubs recently, and it was $84 for a bleacher seat on a Thursday lunchtime, and that blew my mind. And I don't see why it needs to be that expensive. I don't know why beer in San Francisco has to cost $20 for a craft beer. I mean, geez, just make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Celebrate more and more affordable, and you're going to have a sport that's going to be in good health. And it's not too difficult to change those things, I don't think.
Right.
Just don't be so greedy. Absolutely.
No, I agree. It's for a family of 4 to have to drop $500 to go to a baseball game. That's not sustainable. And families can afford it once, but you can't go to 10 games a year like that.
It's crazy. Like, even with the Athletics, and they're a team I normally always defend, parking there's $30. Why? They're complaining about the fact they don't get big attendances. Drop it to $10 and see what happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a cool team and in a cool little city. So $30 is outrageous.
I've always thought, like, if your stadium is half full, why not drop the price in half and see if attendance doubles? Even if it doesn't, even if you only get 50% more, you're going to make that money up in concessions. You're going to make it up in parking. You're going to make it up in merchandise sales. You're going to make it up in long-term growth of your fan base. There are no downsides. It's one thing if you're selling out every game. So like you said, the Cubs, it's $84 for bleachers.
That's just simple economics, I guess, if the demand's there.
Right. If you're selling out every game, well, then probably tickets are too cheap then. If people are, if 44,000 people are willing to pay the money,
supply is so limited, so it's going to push up the price. Yeah,
right.
I understand that, but it's.
But a team like the White Sox, on the other hand, when there's like 8,000 people showing up to the games, okay, well then drop the price, give free tickets away, like figure something out. I've never understood it.
And there's a lot of cool promotions in the minor leagues and independent leagues that I don't see really on a consistent basis, at least at the major league level.
Yeah.
I know, I've just come from Elvis Night at White Sox, and that was really fun.
They actually are a pretty progressive team about doing stuff like that. They've got promotions where it's like 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, 4 sodas, 4 bags of chips for $49, or 2 beers and a bleacher ticket for $22.
I'll be in on that, yeah. I'll be all over that.
So basically, like, for the price of 2 beers is $22. You're basically getting a ticket for free.
Yeah.
So they do stuff like that a lot, and like every Wednesday is dollar hot dog night. So like they do try to do things to make it affordable, but it's hard, if for so many years people haven't had the interest, it's hard to just be like, all right, everybody show up now.
Yeah, it is difficult.
I've read some articles about you in preparation for this, and I've seen some people call your trip silly and childish and even a waste of money. When you see people comment stuff like that, or when they say those things to your face, are you just like, this is awesome what I'm doing?
I don't even read the comments most of the time anymore because, I don't have time for that kind of negativity in my life. It's I'm happy with what I'm doing, and social media is a double-edged sword. So I've been incredibly fortunate with, the kindness most people have shown me on there. But, you're always going to get people that say you're a twat or whatever. So, I just try and ignore it now, or just don't read them.
Yeah. What has been the most surprising thing about this trip for you so far?
The most surprising thing, it sounds really corny, but just I was always quite pessimistic, and this trip has kind of made me think it's seen the good in people more. Certainly because people have been very good to me, and it's kind of restored my faith in humanity to some degree. I think because as a teacher, you live in a little bubble. You're the only adult in the room, and you don't have to necessarily interact with many other adults on a regular basis at all. Certainly I didn't. So just to be out in the big world, and without a structure necessarily or a timetable that's fixed each day, it's been lovely. Being able to chat to people and take time to actually ask more questions and get to know people and converse, and that's something I realised I hadn't done for a long time. So the best part of the trip's really just I'm just enjoying life more, and getting to know people and seeing the good side to more things. Has
your view of America, the country, or Americans, the people, changed, either for the better or for the worse?
No, I mean, we always knew Americans are very, positive, and they're enthusiastic and stuff. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily changed too much at all. It's just kind of restored what I already thought was good about Americans, and there's hardly been any, other than the bro culture, that I kind of, pick up on more in some ballparks than others. Fenway, the Red Sox, is a big bro culture there, and I'm glad they're not my team, because that's not a culture that I want to, promote or be part of. And that's not all Red Sox fans, of course, but just from some of the abusive behaviour I saw there, and with the Phillies as well.
Wow.
I'm glad I'm a Royals fan. I'm glad I'm, from a pretty run-of-the-mill kind of city in the Midwest, and the Kansas City's got some fantastic cool stuff, like with its history of jazz music and the Negro Leagues in particular, and the museum that they've got there, the barbecue food.
Did you go to the Negro League Baseball Museum?
Yeah, I've been to the Jazz Museum and the Negro Leagues Museum. I've been to pretty much every barbecue restaurant that Kansas City has to offer as well. The people were very kind and friendly, and I'm thrilled to bits that that's the team I chose to support.
Yeah. There's people who have covered or played baseball for years that have never seen a perfect game, or never even seen a no-hitter, or never seen a 4 home run game in person. They've been to thousands of baseball games, but it's just luck of the draw. You never know what's going to happen when you show up. What has been the most incredible baseball feat that you've seen in person?
I haven't seen a no-hitter in person. I saw. I think it was Jorge Polanco hit for the cycle.
Cool.
For the Twins against the Phillies. But for me, the most amazing feat I've seen was just, I don't think I've ever been to a game where 2 starting pitchers were pulled, both in the first inning of the game, and then the first game in London, and you have Porcello get 1 out and give up six runs. And you have Tanaka then come in for the Yankees and get 2 outs and give up 6 runs. Neither of them got to 3 outs. Neither of them got out the first inning. and they've both been pulled. And it's the first ever game in Europe, and everyone's kind of looking around, and the first innings is like an hour long,
Right.
thinking, what is going on here?
There's 8 more of these things?
Yeah. I mean, that was, in terms of one of the more memorable games, or one of the strangest things I've seen.
Yeah.
That's definitely up there for this season, because what a bonkers game. 4 hours, 42 minutes, 92 degrees Fahrenheit at first pitch, the hottest day in Britain up until that point. The hottest start for any Yankees pitcher up until that point as well. June the 29th, we're talking here, 2019. So just lots going on in that game, and the highest regular season attendance. It was over 59,000 people in the old Olympic Stadium from 2012, where West Ham United now play. So that will be something that will live long in the memory, being at those 2 games.
Could you imagine wearing these 3/4 sleeve flannel, like wool uniforms in that heat?
I don't know how they do it anyway, with trousers on, like and socks over it and stuff. And they've often got undershirts under their jerseys anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm always blown away by the fact they wear so many clothes as they're playing baseball in this incredible heat that your country has in some places.
Yeah. It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
The humidity will get you, Dan, yeah.
You saw Ichiro's last game as a major leaguer when the Mariners and the A's played in the Tokyo Dome. What was that like?
Surreal, because we didn't know that he was retiring until it got leaked on social media during the game.
Uh-huh.
It was around about the 4th or 5th inning. Word filtered out from one of the Japanese news media agencies. And it was actually an American guy who works for a Japanese media company that leaked it. Didn't leak it, just gave the information first, that there'll be a meeting in the Mariners locker room after the game to do with Ichiro.
Mm-hmm.
And people obviously put 2 and 2 together, and it wasn't too difficult to work out that he was retiring. So that news filtered around the Tokyo Dome, and it kind of affected the atmosphere, because it was a very celebratory atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of Mariners fans in there, even though it was officially 2 Athletics home games.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say 95% of the ballpark in the Tokyo Dome were cheering for the Mariners. And it was quite a somber occasion, because he came in for his last at-bat, as it turned out, and he hit a ground ball, and he sprinted down to the first baseline, and it was a bang play, and everyone was kind of hoping, please just give it to him, just let him have one more hit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was out.
Yeah.
But he kind of went off the field, and you could sense that this is it now. And being in Japan, it was quite a somber moment, really.
Yeah. We're talking earlier that you really like uniforms, you like logos, you're definitely into like the visual side of things in baseball, but you're also definitely into numbers and statistics, so much so that you have 4 fantasy baseball teams. What's wrong with you, man? How do you have the time for this?
Mate, I don't have a job, so I've got all the time
You're
in
driving.
the world.
You drive hours every day. You're going to games. You're making contacts. You're emailing people. You're on social media.
First half of the season, to be honest, it was a bit hectic, and I forgot my password for one of the accounts as well. So I didn't change my team for 3 months, and then the guy who's the commissioner of the league messaged me and said, "Oi, you're dragging the whole league down.
Yeah.
You've got to sort this out." And he was spot on to do that. Justin Mason, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a league with 315 fantasy baseball experts.
Whoa.
And
how many of those 315 do you think are actually experts?
I mean, they all talk a good game. A lot of them have got podcasts and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not one, and I'm in it. So I'm sure there's plenty of other people in there like me. But I've put a lot of effort into it the last 5 weeks I've been out here.
Mm-hmm.
And beginning to turn it around now. So back in the top 200 now. I was 250th out of 315, having not done anything. And now I'm 198th. So
I'm proud of you.
Next season's going to be my season, I think.
You're going to crack the top 150.
This one's been a learning campaign, I think. And you just got to be so organised. And I wasn't to begin with. So I'll change that next year.
Do you still keep score during games when you go?
I try to sometimes. If I'm on my own and it's a kind of lunchtime game and I've got to drive afterwards, I'll make sure I try and stay focused and off the beers. More importantly, by trying to score the game, I'll go and get a scorecard. At the Padres, they give them away free. I know at the Brewers they charge $2. So it kind of varies, but get a little pen in my pocket and try and score it. But it gets to the 5th inning, Dan, and I've got to pop to the loo, and I'll come back and I've missed couple of outs and I go on the MLB app and I'm just thinking, I may as well just copy this all in. You know what I mean?
Right.
What's the point now? Yeah. So I don't think I've ever finished a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think the furthest I've got is the 7th inning, and then all the pitching changes come in, and my mind wanders, and I say no. That's still something. I've not finished a game, but I try fairly regularly to get through it. But
If you were at a game where somebody had a no-hitter going, do you think you'd be like, all right, this is the game I'm finishing?
If I realised there was a no-hitter going, yeah, definitely. Then I'd just hold it, and I wouldn't drink any beer or anything. But yeah, that hasn't happened yet. I don't think I've got too close either, to be honest. But I need to go back through. I keep a spreadsheet of every game I've been to from this 162.
Cool.
And I hyperlink in the official box score from the MLB or the MILB or the independent website. So at the end of the season, I can kind of click on them and just see, did I miss something here? Or,
yeah. Were you at a game that you didn't realize, like, oh, that was kind of cool what happened, and I didn't even know it was.
Well, it was like that Planko one, yeah. I didn't even know he hit for the cycle until I went on Twitter after the game, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, hit for the cycle!" And I was like, "I must have popped to the loo when he got a triple or something because I've missed that." Yeah,
that's funny. What happens to the scorecards or the notebooks? Like, what happens to those things? You just toss them when you leave the stadium, or
they always go in the recycle bin, listeners. Yeah, always recycle your paper. So yeah, recycle bin, Dan, always.
You're definitely a teacher.
Yeah.
You've gotten some pretty incredible access on your trips. Is that the best perk of what you're doing?
Yes and no, because sometimes the access can be as much a curse as a blessing, because they want you. I was with the Braves and they wanted me to do a load of stuff that I would never choose to do, because they wanted me on the big jumbotron screen guessing which hat the ball was under. And I've got all these drunk kind of bros just shouting at me from the side. Number two, yeah. And I'm like, it's obviously number 3. And I've got all these drunk guys. If I get this wrong, they're going to absolutely crucify me on the big jumbotron. So, yeah, there's stuff like that. When I came out here, and it's still very much the case, I came out here wanting to promote baseball, fundamentally, independent, minor league, major league, just how fun it is and how cool I think it is. And, try and, make some links to some of the UK accounts and things originally was the plan. And it's always awkward when someone wants, I get asked a lot, can you throw a first pitch out? And I always say no, because I don't want to be centre of attention, and I've got a dreadful arm. So, yeah, that's not why I'm out here, is to be, the centre of attention myself. So even with the Twitter account, I try and make sure I don't post any photos of my face more than about twice a week. And that's just so my mum knows I'm alive, because I'm not very good at messaging back home. So, yeah, I mean, the access has been fantastic at times. But essentially, like today with the White Sox, I got a ticket from the White Sox, very kind of them to give me a ticket. It was behind home plate. But I went and stood in the outfield for the first 4 innings, and then went up and sat up in the nosebleeds for the last 5, because for me, that's I can concentrate more on the game there, and you've got more space. And yeah, I don't need a fancy ticket to enjoy a baseball game.
I've tried to go to as many stadiums as I could, and it's always interesting to me to get the different perspectives. If you're only going to be at a stadium one time, you want to try to soak in as many different views as possible, because you're like, certain stadiums have certain characteristics or design elements that you're just like, hey, this is unique to this particular stadium. I want to see what it's like to sit at the top of the Green Monster. I want to see what it's like to sit a mile high in Denver, at the ring of purple seats in that stadium. There's these different experiences where you only have maybe the one shot to have them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I love eating peanuts at a baseball game, and I'm always paranoid that I'm going to flick a peanut shell at some massive dude and he's going to turn around and smack me. So if I'm in the nosebleeds and there's no one sat anywhere near me, I can just flick them wherever I want. So that's always more relaxing as well.
You tweet a lot about your mustache. And
Do I?
Yeah, I've noticed a handful.
Okay.
I've definitely more than 0.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I can't remember a single tweet about the mustache recently, but
I can remember one where you suggested that Rafael Palmeiro, who grow his back.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was with the Cleveland Railroaders last summer. It was only the second independent baseball game I've been to. Small town, kind of about an hour south of Dallas area, and yeah, they said I had 4 minutes with Rafael Palmeiro. I didn't know anything about the guy other than he was 50 something.
Trying to make a comeback.
Yeah, so I was just trying to talk to him, and it got to about 3 minutes. I was like, I'm struggling big time here. And I'd seen a photo of him when I Google imaged him, that when he used to have a moustache. So I literally just asked him, because I had nothing else to think about. Even though he's like, there's so many things I could have asked him, and I wish I had now in hindsight, but
one
I'm
of
such
only
an idiot.
6 players in history with 500 home runs and 3,000 hits.
I learned that after the interview.
Hey buddy, what's going on with your mustache?
Yeah, just getting to the crux of things.
So how did he respond to that?
He said he wasn't going to grow it back anymore.
silliness.
Yeah, I told him incorrect.
He also used to be in these Just for Men commercials, which
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you could have asked him about that. If you get 4 more minutes with him, you've got 2 new questions. So you're welcome.
Lots to work on here.
What is the strangest thing that you've seen in a gift shop in a stadium?
Oh, I find all the Star Wars stuff a bit weird. I don't really know where the tie-in is there with them all being Star Wars, like whether they've signed a deal together. But yeah, I find that crossover just quite odd.
Well, I think
There's loads of other movies that are good.
The whole Star Wars universe was purchased by Disney.
They own ESPN.
And Disney owns ESPN.
That makes more sense now. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't get the whole Star Wars fixation. It's a good set of movies, sure, but there's loads of other cool stuff they could be doing.
It's no Space Jam.
It's no Space Jam. It's no Anchorman. No Superbad. So yeah, what's going on?
All right, let's play a game called Love It, Hate It.
Oh yeah, I like this.
I'll name one thing that I hate about something that you love.
Oh jeez.
And then you name something you love about that.
Okay,
So something I hate about soccer, because I'm,
oh jeez,
you're from
personal affront.
Yeah, right. I mean, I know your dad played soccer, and
he was good. Yeah, I played as well. Listeners, yeah, it wasn't as good.
I hate the diving.
Okay, that's fair.
Do you hate the diving?
I don't hate anything, but yeah, I prefer.
Do you dislike the diving?
The simulation. Oh yeah, I dislike it.
Why?
I understand why they do it at times.
Explain this to me, because I don't understand why they do it.
Okay, so let's imagine you're a very quick guy. He's about 5'7".
I am a very quick guy. He's about
150 pounds.
Well, okay, I'm imagining now.
Yeah, and you've got like a 6'5" defender who weighs 200 pounds, and he's sliding in at you. You're going to try and jump over that, so that if he crunches you, that could be a leg breaker. So you're anticipating the contact before it comes in. Yeah, just like when you're driving, you're anticipating that driver on my right hasn't looked in his mirror necessarily. So maybe I need to let him know I'm there. So with diving, often they'll say, or they'll justify it by, I was anticipating the contact, it didn't come, so it looked like a dive.
Okay.
But if I hadn't dived, I'd have got crunched.
So then maybe the word I'm not looking for is diving. Maybe the word I'm looking for is the writhing around on the ground in pain for 40 seconds when they haven't been contacted.
Yeah, I mean, that's just cheating. It's trying to get someone a yellow card or a red card, and it's trying to con the referee, and it's acting.
Why don't they give yellow cards and red cards more often for that?
They're trying to, but it's so hard to prove or disprove whether someone's genuinely hurt or not.
What if soccer made a rule where if you roll around on the ground...
I mean, Neymar's he's the worst culprit here, the Brazilian striker, yeah.
What if they made the rule where if you do that, you have to go sit on the sideline for a minute? Like, if you want to play that game, fine. Yeah. You're out of the game for 90 seconds. Do you think that would cut down on it?
I think they're trying to, yeah, they try to do a few things whereby if you're on the field and you're injured, you need to leave the field before you can re-enter it. But... yeah, I mean, diving's annoying. I agree with you on that one.
Fantastic. All right. You name something that you love about soccer.
I love the fact it's a global game, and I love the fact it's so easy for you to play a game of soccer regardless of whether you're rich or poor or, where you're born in the world. It's find a couple of trees or put down a couple of clothes items and you've got goals, and then use, a tennis ball or whatever you can find that's vaguely round, and you've got a football, and it's something that you can play barefoot as well. You don't need fancy shoes. It's a universal game.
Does it bother you that Americans call American football?
No, it doesn't.
And that we created the word soccer?
No, it doesn't annoy me. No, it's just a different country with different. Yeah,
I like you. You're very even keel. You're like, I don't hate anything. It's stupid, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, no, I've got no real issue with it. Whilst I'm here, I call it soccer, like I have done on the podcast so far. It's your culture. This is what you call it. So, yeah, it's fine.
Thank you. All right. Now, you name something that you hate about something that you know that I love.
Something I hate about something you love.
And I know you don't hate, but what's something you dislike about something you know that I love?
I mean, I like all the stuff you like. That's why we've got on so well.
I think so, too.
That's why I'm staying at your house.
But there are things that I hate about baseball.
Oh, okay. What do I hate about... I know you love Alkaline Trio. I love them. I know you love the White Sox. I've really enjoyed the 3 games I've been on the south side.
Yeah.
I like the pizza you got as well. Jeez, I was just looking around the room, seeing if there's anything I dislike that's going on here.
What about Shoeless Joe Jackson? You hate anything about Shoeless Joe
No, I
Jackson?
really like Shoeless Joe
Great answer.
Jackson.
This
Yeah.
is so far the best podcast interview we had.
Yeah, he's fascinating character.
Yes.
And he needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
You think so?
Yeah, he needs to be in Cooperstown, yeah.
What is your argument for him being in?
Look at his stats.
That's a fair argument.
Everyone is looking for a competitive advantage in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Like even now, like Jeff Passan tweeted about, the MLB players taking over-the-counter gas pills to enhance sexual performance in order to just get a slight buzz or a slight, I don't know what it is they're trying to get.
Yeah.
Well, I think I do. Well, not in a baseball field. I don't know what they're trying to get actually, but there must be some chemicals in there that could give them an extra something.
Mm-hmm.
So, you look at his statistics in that 1919 World Series, and you look just at the numbers, and that's not a guy who is trying to throw anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guy who's looking at the numbers anyway, the absolute most he can do for his team. And I don't know the ins and outs in it, Dan. I mean, you know everything about it pretty much, but I certainly don't dislike Shoeless Joe Jackson. I think he's one of those fantastic baseball characters that has been mistreated, and I would hope in the future that he does get let into Cooperstown. What
is your favorite statistic in baseball, or what do you think is the most telling statistic? Like if you were...
It's easy. RBIs. I'm joking.
Well, it was great having you.
Yeah, RBIs. Other than the win statistic, that's one of my least favorites.
And why do you think that's such a silly statistic?
Because it's about who's already on base. Like you have no control over whether the three guys ahead of you load the bases and then you drive in four because you just happen to hit your one home run of that month.
I think there should be a statistic created that's like weighted RBI, where it's the number of at-bats you have with people on base.
Yep.
And if somebody's on first base when you come up and you score them, you get more points than if somebody's on second base. And
I see.
That
makes some more sense, yeah. But I mean, just to get back to the original question, the best statistic is... I like the ones that are kind of on a scale of, where 100's average, because it's so easy then to compare players.
Yeah.
And even if you're new to baseball, which is, in Europe and certainly where I'm from in the United Kingdom, we are trying to introduce baseball there. It can be intimidating, as we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. But if you have a weighted statistic where 100's average, you know straight away that, like WRC Plus, for example, Mike Trout is whatever he is at the moment, 188, or maybe he's higher than that. Right. So he is 88% better than the average.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to everyone, regardless of whether you're new to the sport or not. So I like those. I hate the counting statistics, as I guess most people do these days, I hope. Mm-hmm. And I mean, OPS is a nice, accessible one for people that are fairly new to baseball. Mm-hmm. I still look out for that because on scoreboards in MLB ballparks, you don't see many of the weighted statistics necessarily. So for pitchers, I like looking at FIP. Yeah, those are probably my two. One for hitters, one for pitchers.
Interesting. I like it. What's your obsession with Hamm's beer?
Hamm's beer, very simple. So I'm into similar music to you. Uh-huh. Maybe not exactly the same, but there's a band called Tiny Moving Parts. They're from a place called Benson in Minnesota. One of them's got a massive moustache, and he always wears Hamm's t-shirts, and they drink Hamm's beer in their music videos, and they're always really happy. And I like listening to them when I'm road tripping. So it's a Midwestern beer. It's a beer I can't find in many places I travel to. Cracking logo, cracking cartoon, and commercials from back in the day. You can still find them on YouTube. Listeners, Hamm's beer. And is it the land of clear...
Or sky blue water. Land of
sky blue waters? Yeah, I think you're right.
Land of the sky blue water.
Goes down a treat and bring it on. I'll have a few more of those.
But again, it goes back to the mustache.
No, it's just the band. I like Tiny Moving Parts. The fact he's got a moustache just makes me like him even more. Yeah, it's just the music and the band I like.
Fair enough. At the beginning of this podcast, I asked you to name 5 numbers for me. Oh. And that's because we do a segment called Quick Pitch. It's like a lightning round.
Oh, good.
So I've got 99 questions typed out, and I'm going to read the numbers that you picked.
Hit me with them.
Number 27 was the first one that you picked. And that question is, if you were a professional baseball player, what would your walk-up music be?
Wayward Son by Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that one go?
Carry on my wayward son. Yeah.
Very good. Why would that be your pick?
Because I'm always traveling. I'm pretty wayward. I'm sure my parents think I'm a wayward son, and my favorite team's the Kansas City Royals. So that's perfect. Yeah.
So you have thought about this before?
Andy asked me. Yeah. It's something we've talked about before, I think. Yeah.
Okay. The next one, number 7. Where do you like to sit when you go to games?
I like to be in the outfield if possible. Some MLB ballparks that's too expensive for some reason or other, like the Cubs. But if not, I like to be up in the nosebleeds. I always like to take a photo directly up behind home plate with the 2 foul poles in, just so you can kind of get a feel for the whole ballpark. And they tend to be very cheap seats, and particularly if you're sitting up there at the Coliseum, wherever, you get a lot of good characters up there as well doing some crazy stuff, and it's all fun. Yeah.
When you sit in the outfield, do you prefer to sit dead center so you can watch the pitchers? Where do you sit?
In Jamsil Stadium, where I've seen the most baseball in Seoul and Korea, we always sat in the left field, just to the right of the left field foul pole, as high up as we could. And that's still my, if there is an outfield with high seats, I like to go to that left field foul pole and move across a little bit and sit as high up as I can.
So that feels like home to you.
Yeah, that's where I'm happiest.
Cool. Number 3, if you got to make Mount Rushmore of your favorite, do you know what Mount Rushmore is?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you got to make Mount Rushmore of your favorite team, what 4 figures from that franchise's history would you put on it? And it doesn't have to be 4 players. It could just be 4 people from, managers or owners or,
Yeah, so I'm a Royals fan. I've been a Royals fan since 2017. So my options here are fairly limited. Do you know about the history of the Royals though? Like it's from... Yeah, I know. 1985 we won the World Series. The 2015 we won the World Series. I've heard about some of our famous players like George Brett or whatever. But if I had to do a Mount Rushmore, I'll just do it since I've been following the team. Okay. And I guess it would be, and a few of these players have gone, so it's pretty sad. But I've got a Lorenzo Cain jersey. I love Lorenzo Cain, centre fielder now for the Brewers. I really like Whit Merrifield. Yeah. Because he's pacey and he's got a high batting average, and he just he's kind of developed very late in his career. I think he's 29 now. I love Adalberto Mondesi, who wears number 27. Which was a number earlier. He's an exciting player. He's been derailed by injuries recently, but he's incredible on the bases, very fast. That's 3, right? So I've got Merrifield, Cain, Mondesi. You need one more. And then the other one would have to be Alex Gordon, left fielder. I've got a Gordon jersey. Yeah, he's a Nebraska boy. He's been with the Royals ever since we drafted him, I think. And I do love Alex Gordon. Part of that 2015 World Series winning team. So that would be my... It's not a very exciting one, listeners. I apologise. Since 2017, as a Royals fan, I am limited here in what I can say. But that'd be it. Those are fair selections. All right, next question, number 5. Everybody had a favorite player growing up that wasn't really that great, but for some reason they still loved him. Who is your favorite player that's like that? Shin-Soo-Choo. Yeah, I love Shin-Soo-Choo. I've watched him tonight. I've watched him the last 4 nights in Texas and then 3 games up at the White Sox. He didn't even play in the first game at the White Sox. I was gutted. He's seen as a bit of an albatross around the neck of the Texas Rangers because of his salary, which is about $21 million a year, I think. And but if you look at when he's been healthy, he's been an incredibly productive player, and he plays a Korean brand of baseball that I grew up watching in terms of my recent baseball education anyway. And it's just a lovely bloke. I've met him, and Shin-Soo-Choo's my favorite player that people always scratch their heads about why. Cool. And the last question that you picked is number 11. What has been the biggest hurdle that you've had to overcome? Nothing. I've had an easy life, mate. Seriously, I haven't had to go across any hurdles. I've been very fortunate. Nothing. Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything on the horizon that you're excited about, either personally, professionally? Maybe, some income would be good at some point. It's been 5 months now, but... How do you plan on making that happen? No idea. Yeah. I've got 5 weeks or 6 weeks left of the regular season, and I haven't thought that far ahead, so... I wish I hadn't asked that question, actually, Dan. Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. It's quite a sobering thought. Is there a way to monetize what you're doing? No, I don't think so. I'm just trying to spread my own passion and love of baseball through silly comments about American culture and cool photos of ballparks. That's about it. Can Major League Baseball hire you as some sort of British ambassador to the game? I don't think so. I don't think they've got any interest, and I'm not sure I'd necessarily want to have my wings clipped by a large corporation. So I'm not sure that would work out.
What if you did like a Travel Channel TV series where you just redo this trip and have cameras follow you
around? If I was just being me the whole time and someone wants to send a cameraman or camera woman with me, then that'd be easy, yeah. But
call it BBC. They've got a bunch of cameras and stuff. It's got to be that easy, right?
Just literally ring them and they'll just say sure.
What about Paul Hollywood? He's got so many cars he could lend you.
The cake guy.
Yeah. He loves cars. He loves road trips. He loves being on TV.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know Paul personally. But I'll be up for a road trip again. Yeah, if someone wants to film that and just the crazy stuff I get up to, that'd be fine. But
are you telling me that not every British person knows every other British person?
No, I don't know everyone in the United Kingdom personally. Right. I don't know Paul. No, I haven't met Paul yet for a beer, but I like his little beard.
I like the Great British Baking Show. I don't know. I don't think that's what you guys call it there. I think we have to call it that here because of some weird...
I don't know what we call... I mean... I haven't lived there for 5 years. So I've got no idea what's on British TV at the minute, but I think
it's on Netflix.
There's Mary Berry's on there. She's nice.
She was on there. They replaced her. I know, it's pretty sad.
Now you tell me, jeez.
Hate to break that to you. How can people find you if they want to see more of what you're doing and follow you along on your trip?
I'm only on Twitter. That's it. I'm at BaseballBrit. And I don't know, there'll be too much good content on there after 5 weeks' time. So enjoy it whilst you can.
And what about the Bat Flips?
Yeah, the Bat Flips boys, they run the big website in the United Kingdom where anyone from wherever you are in the world can write about baseball, and they'll put it on their website. They'll give you that platform. They've got a podcast as well. They're lovely chaps, and they work really hard to promote the game back home. So that's batflips_nerds on Twitter, or batflipsandnerds.com for the website. Or just type in Batflips and Nerds to whatever podcast user you have, and you should be able to find it. They do a great job.
As an American, when somebody from the UK says cheers to me, what am I supposed to say back to them?
Just say it back, yeah. Cheers can mean goodbye, or it can mean, this is fun or whatever, or we're having a beer, you're having a Gatorade. So yeah, cheers. It's just a friendly, positive expression of whatever, yeah. Just say it back. Okay.
Because sometimes it's used as like, thank you, right?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, that's how I use it mostly, yeah.
So would it be inappropriate to say you're welcome?
No, it wouldn't be inappropriate. I mean, it's a very American phrase. So you might have someone, are you American? Is your mum American or something? But yeah, it's very similar, I guess.
Okay, so you say cheers and I'm supposed to say cheers back. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, just say, cheers, Dan, for having me. And you go, cheers, Joe, for coming on.
Okay. Cheers, Joey, for coming on the show.
Cheers, Dan, for having me. It's been a pleasure, mate.
All right, now it's time for a segment called What'd You Think, Mom?, where we talk to my mom who just listened to the interview with me, and we ask her what she thinks. This is my real, actual mom. Her name is Lori, but I've always just called her Mom. Can you say something to prove that you are my actual mom?
I'm trying to figure out, if you're asked for your 5 favorite numbers, what are you going to say first, 23 or 7? And I think that would probably stump you. So, and I don't know how many people would, well, probably, but who knows, you would know why that would stump you.
7 is what I would always answer first.
Okay, that's what I thought, but that 23 thing, so.
Yeah.
All right.
So what'd you think of the Joey Mellows interview, Baseball Brit?
I thought it was fascinating the way he came to know baseball, and how it was really for his fellow man by trying not to be such a SOB for the people he was teaching by staying up late and, coming in the next morning groggy after trying to catch
the soccer games.
I was going to say football. Not only that, but then to become a fan of baseball, but it's so beyond a fan of baseball, to have a passion for it enough for an adopted game that you come to late in life and travel for it, and then quit your job to travel for it. That just is a really amazing thing, and just goes to show you how many people around the world might trade places with any American on any given day.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is kind of sad about life, and the fact that we need money to survive, is that you don't have the opportunity to find these things that you might become super passionate about and make other people in the world passionate about, because I have to go to work tomorrow because I need to pay my rent next month.
Right.
And if you don't have those opportunities to find the things that you're passionate about, whether they're sports or art or history, whatever, you don't live life the way that you potentially could or should.
Right. Your spirit isn't really fulfilled, and you're really gray instead of being full color the way you should be.
Yeah, and that's one thing about being around Joey, is that he was just an infectious...
So positive.
Yeah.
But not in a, cheerleader, geeky kind
right.
of way.
Yeah, not hokey at all. It's
Right.
just, he's just happy to be there and just a fun guy to be around.
Yeah, that came across when you said, what's the biggest hurdle you've ever, and immediately, before you even finished saying the question, nothing. I haven't had any major hurdles.
Yeah.
So that's a frame of mind. Even if it's true, he has the perspective to recognize that and just put it all in perspective with what he's seen in his life so far.
One of the things that I noticed you nod your head at vehemently when I said it while we were listening was how frustrating it is to try to find the score of a baseball game when you're at a baseball game.
Right.
I hate that so much. As somebody who loves baseball and pays attention, like I don't keep score every inning of every game I go to, but I'm always watching. I'm not sitting there on my phone. I'm not getting drunk. I'm there to watch the game. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I have no idea what the score is.
I absolutely feel the same way. I've been there so many times, and it doesn't matter if you're in a major league park. Why? Why?
I don't know.
I don't get it. Ultimately, you're still there for the game, and you still want people to return for the game, so help them enjoy it. Help them know what's going on. I related to when he made the comment about you step away for concessions or to
pop to the loo.
To pop to the loo. You come back and it's like you just want to know, okay, what did I miss? And unless you have a phone in your hand, you might not know what you missed because you have to track down. And so when I'm at a game, and it doesn't matter if I'm sitting in a club section, which we've been lucky enough to do at times, or anywhere else in the stadium, and you're trying to figure out where is the place that I need to look on a regular basis to find the score and find the count.
And the real frustrating thing is when the stadiums use like the LED scoreboards,
Right.
like a ring around the stadium, and they don't keep it stationary.
Right.
Like it's not a static, like, yeah, during the third inning we show the score there, but during the fourth inning it's a billboard.
Come on, people.
So where do you want me to look?
Right.
Just show me. Maybe I'm like a stickler, but they have a thing called the scoreboard, and I feel like it should be there, but it isn't there always.
That's a moneymaker, so the dollars are going to determine what images are up on that scoreboard.
Yeah, that's silly to me. He also talked about the romanticism of American road trips, and I thought that was kind of an interesting topic for the two of us, specifically because we do that and get that and go on them and enjoy them.
Right, and actually we're taping this during a semi-lockdown here in South Carolina with coronavirus, but so many people, in a way to just be able to stay safe but still get out, are just going in their cars and going for rides. And when you're able to appreciate the outdoors or just drive through a small town, that is how you can feel American and see Americana and see, especially the further out you get from an urban area, what it's all about, because those areas are far and away in the majority space-wise in our country. And he gets that. I love when you asked what is his favorite venue. Is it an MLB park or is it a minor league park? And he said he appreciates the mix because, well, first of all, when you're in MLB park, you're watching the best players on the planet play. But you're also, when you go to the minor league teams, the small towns and the feel of the small towns and how the passion kind of starts there. And man, that's what the MLB needs to figure out. We've talked about this before. Get back to the concept of town ball and supporting that, because you'll build your fan base.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that general idea when Joey mentioned the 3 ideas of how to improve baseball, and he talked about making it more affordable. And we mentioned that, like, would you rather have 50% of your stadium full paying 100% of the price, or 100% of the stadium full paying 50% of the price?
Right.
That's the same kind of thing as just the same concept of, over time, yeah, you can sucker somebody into paying $1,000 for a seat behind home plate, but the amount of people that you're pulling from to get those tickets purchased is so much smaller than if you just make everybody in the country a fan of baseball. The demand is going to go up and more people will be invested. And it's not just about ticket sales or concession sales. It's about who's subscribing to your MLB TV, who's buying content online and purchasing T-shirts and jerseys and hats. And I don't buy any gear at games, but how many jerseys do I have? How many T-shirts do I have? How many hats do I have? That's because I love the game. It's not because I went to a game.
Right.
I love the sport. And I think that is where Major League Baseball is so short-sighted, that they want to get every dollar that they can out of you when you walk in the door, instead of realizing that there are so many more dollars that happen not inside the door. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've never understood why they don't get that.
Right. And it's especially critical in the smaller markets where parks are half empty. As an accountant, figure out the economics of what you're doing and what you need to do and get people in and build up the love so that they are spending dollars all along at a rate they can afford. But you have it all year long, not just for a day at the park where now they just blew their budget and you may or may not have won them over.
Back to road trips, though, I keep thinking about that while we're locked up here and the museum isn't even open because, we're in the middle of a move, this would be the perfect time to go on a road trip. Gas is so cheap.
Right.
And I'm just itching to get out of this house and drive anywhere. Anywhere.
So that's why you're going up and down the driveway for 4 hours.
But yeah, I have a couple of road trips planned in the back of my head of like, oh, this would be a nice thing to do. And now would be the perfect time to do it. But everything is closed and you can't go anywhere. So it's frustrating on multiple levels.
That is my daydream too. That is my go-to daydream of, it would be so nice to just go and knock off some of these things that I've really wanted to see, and it would be nice and low-key now. No one's there. Of course, I break that rule, if everyone thought that way. But yeah, it's the catch-22.
When we asked Joey what his 3 ways to improve baseball, he said, make it more accessible, so no more TV blackout deals, stuff like that. Make it more fun, and make it more affordable. What are some of the ways that you would improve baseball?
Well, I like his idea of make it more fun with having more emotion, as long as it's relatively sportsmanlike and no one gets injured. Often. The bat flip concept was a new concept to me, so I think that's really kind of cool. And
when I showed you videos I showed you a compilation of Korean bat flips, because that's what Joey was talking about. And your first question was, where are they landing?
Right. Because you see him flip it off, and it's like, okay, I know what's on either side behind him, and I hope that the flimsy netting that's going to catch a ball can handle a bat with velocity. But yeah, I want to see where it goes, and I want to see what headgear and what PPE players in the dugout are wearing to protect them from incoming. But yeah, it just makes total sense. The teams that stick out in your mind, like I haven't been as addicted to baseball since we moved to South Carolina. Of course, Joe Jackson is a whole different story, but in terms of being in the loop of what players are and what teams and what's going on.
Well, you don't have a major league team to follow here.
That's the problem. But I know that sometime within the past 11 years, there was a team with beards, and they all had beards. And who was it? Was it Boston?
There's been a bunch. They actually showed a video. The Yankees are famous for not allowing facial hair.
Right. Oh, don't even get me started.
And
Johnny Damon.
During the pandemic, they're not required to shave. So the Yankees social media team made a bunch of their players send in videos of like, oh, can you just send words of encouragement to the fans? And like, oh, we'll see you soon. And we're happy that you're still being safe and all of them had facial hair.
Who's this guy talking to me?
And everyone on Twitter was like, oh, they must be really loving not having to shave their beards.
Yeah, there might be some fingers upraised with that. Yeah. Yeah. I loved Johnny Damon from his Boston days. And when he went to the other side and became a Yankee, and it was like Samson having to cut his hair. I didn't get it. I guess whatever works for you. But really, come on. Going back to the bat flips for a second, I thought one of the things Joey could maybe work on is when he was talking about his favorite place to sit is up in the nosebleed section because he doesn't have to worry about flipping peanut shells at some, guy who's going to come and punch him in the face. So maybe that's his little bat flip. His fan bat flip is peanut flips, and where you don't have to worry about the consequences of hitting someone in the dugout. So.
And then he talked a little bit about scoring a game. Is that something you have ever learned how to do?
Well, I have been one of the official scorekeepers for the Shoeless Joe Vintage Games for most years, if not all years. I think 1 year, maybe not.
Are you guys keeping score proper, or are you is it tally marks and keeping track of like who's on base?
We keep it two different ways.
Okay.
So your father keeps it more the traditional way. And while I have the basic concept of that down, oftentimes there's a lot going on when we're sitting back there because you're wearing a lot of hats sometimes when you're doing that for us. And I have my own way of doing it, which is basically I want to make sure I'm able to tell the dugout where you are in the batting order at any time. But I'm also tracking who's getting the outs, what are they hitting, singles, doubles, whatever. But of course the tally of the runs is the most critical and the outs.
Right.
Because really the team managers and coaches, they have a loose idea sometimes, but it's a different pace of a game. And, it's not like you have a full coaching staff. You know, it's like one guy who's doing a bunch of stuff. So it is critical, and I do it in my own way, but someone else could pick it up and understand it. But it is not the tracking within the diamond of where someone's moving on the field or how that's going.
Yeah, and even to do it that way, there are a million different ways, and people have their own idiosyncrasies. I think Mike Tedrick told us the story about Mike is one of the players on our vintage team, and his son Joe has been on our team for almost the whole run of all these vintage games. They've been around for forever. Mike told the story about his dad used to keep score at baseball games in a very specific way that he never saw anybody else do it that exact way. And then he did some digging and found another person who did it that way. And he's like, whoa, that's the way my dad used to do it. Where did you learn how to do this? And it was because the broadcast that they used to listen to in Cleveland, the radio play-by-play guy told people how to keep score, and like I think sent out a booklet that you could subscribe to or like the send away thing that taught you how to keep score, and it was that way. So for like a very specific period of time in a very specific place, that's how people kept score. And just the little shorthand, it's like you would think that if you're keeping score at a basketball game, it's the same way every time. Okay, did he get points? Did he get rebounds? Did he get assists? But for baseball, you can say, okay, where did that single go? Not just did he hit a single, but where did it go?
Right.
Was it a ground ball? Was it a fly ball? Did it?
Right.
And to have all these different notations, and the runner was out between second and third during the top of the fifth inning. Okay, but how did he get out? Was it a fielder's choice? Did he get caught stealing? There's so many different ways and details that you can or cannot put in. So I think that's another daunting thing for somebody learning the game like Joey. I wanted to get in more of that of who taught you how to keep score.
Right.
And that's what I asked, what happens to the score sheets after you take them? And he said he recycles them. So then it was kind of a moot point because I wanted to ask, like, if you look at a scorecard that you kept 9 months ago, can you tell me exactly what happened in the top of the third? Those are the types of interesting things that the game of baseball has that most other sports don't have.
Right. So I have two things with that, one of which we've talked about before, which is the historian Doris Kearns Goodwin talking about how as a little girl, her father had taught her how to keep a scorecard. And every day when he'd come home from work, she would reel off what the Brooklyn Dodgers had done. And she felt it was her responsibility that if she didn't do that, he wouldn't know what happened at the game that day. It wasn't until she was older that she realized, all he had to really do was listen to the game on the radio or, pick up the paper the next day and read the box score. But one of the things Joey talked about was even if he starts keeping score at a game, one little distraction, one little getting up, and now you come back and how do you recapture what you've missed and still keep current with what's going on in front of your eyes? And that kind of would be where I would be too. I always get a scorecard when I go to a game. And I think about doing it, but I know I'm not going to get all the way through. So it just becomes at that point a souvenir.
And Joey brought up the point of everything's online now anyways. Right. So when you know that in the back of your mind, you're not thinking like it's critical that I keep up to every single pitch, because if I miss one, I can look at it later. Right. And then when you think of it that way, you're like, all right, well, then what am I doing here?
Exactly right.
I could be flipping peanuts.
That's right. One thing I know any sporting event I go to, whether it's local or a major league level, I always read about that event the next day, either online or however, because you do miss things, whether you turn away for a second and you miss this play, or you didn't even realize the undercurrent of what was going on between the two managers or this and this. And when I read it through independent eyes and knowledgeable eyes, it means so much more, because I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw that happen. I wondered what that was about or whatever. And I think that speaks to it too. If you get too caught up in, oh, crap, what happened with that play? How do I mark it on my card? You're missing the point in some ways.
Yeah.
And you have to respect the space you are in and the moment you're in, and just enjoy it for where you're at.
When we used to go to White Sox games when we lived in Chicago, the very first thing we do when we get in the car in the parking lot after we left a game is turn on the sports radio station in Chicago and listen to the post-game show and have them recap what we just spent 4 hours watching.
Right.
So we know what we just saw.
And we all were happy doing that.
Right. That's
like,
that's part of the routine, you know.
Absolutely.
That's definitely part of it. And
it gives you the closure that you need to process what you just saw.
And, you know, they'll play the replays of, you know, if somebody hits a home run, they play the play-by-play replay. And it's like,
Right.
okay, well, when we're sitting in the stands, we don't hear that. So
Right.
they hear the emotion and hear, you know, that's all part of it.
Absolutely. When he first started talking about trying to understand baseball, and another way that he fell in love with it, and how he planned his first trip to the U.S. in 2016, and he talked about watching Ken Burns' baseball, I thought was so interesting. He had a way with words. Joe had a
He's
way
a
with
smart
words. And he talked about picking an episode on any given night and just letting it play in the background, and that's what he would fall asleep to, because the cadence of the music and just the slow pace on purpose of how that documentary played out, he'd just fall asleep to that. And he said, you know, the romantic themes to it, that was just so evocative of how that documentary is. It's just such a classic. And I liked that he is a Kansas City fan and loves the city. Just, you could hear how he said he's been to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, he's been to the Jazz Museum, he's been to all the barbecue places there, and he gets it. And he grabs life by the throat and let's go. Here we go. We're going to take it to the full limit. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I'm definitely glad to have talked to him. And over the past couple of years, he's gotten some really cool publicity. He's been covered in Sports Illustrated and ESPN, and all sorts of people have done press on him. So yeah, he's got a cool story. He's doing something that I'm sure if money was no object for a lot of people, they would want to do. But even if money is no object, it still takes guts to hop in a car and spend 5 months on the road, you know? And I think that's, you know, we kind of touched on this in the Phil Dixon interview, that you get an appreciation for just how grueling a baseball season is. Right. When you're going to this many games, it's not fun, you know? And people think that, oh, these baseball players get paid so much, all they have to do is play a game. That's the least part of their job. You know, it's the travel and being away from your family. And yeah, you only show up to the game from 1:05 to 4:15, but they're there at 9 a.m. getting treatments done on injuries and taking batting practice and talking to the press. It's a full-time job. You're under constant scrutiny. If you mess up once, you get dogged on radio and TV and internet for weeks. It's stressful. It's not a fun thing all the time. And
it sounds glamorous to be in a hotel in different cities, but really it's not. And as soon as you step outside the safety net of your hotel room, you have to be on. You know, you have to have your public persona up at all times, just so you don't reflect badly on your team.
And we're kind of seeing that in the Last Dance documentary, where Michael is talking about how he's just ready to go away.
Right.
You know, and you would think that he's the most famous athlete on the planet, the most dominant player in his sport ever, but certainly at this time, you know, he's winning 2 and 3 championships in a row, going to the finals, winning scoring titles, and all he wants to do is just have some peace and quiet.
Right.
So if you can't enjoy that level of dominance, then who can? And that's not a knock against Michael and saying that, well, how can you not enjoy what's happening? It's nobody realizes the pressure that they're under. And I think that's why people like that, Charles Barkley will put Tiger Woods in that category. And, you know, there are so few people on the planet in the history of the world who have experienced that level of fame that you have no peers. That must be a very isolating, lonely existence.
And the expectation of high-level performance every time you step onto your field of play, because you don't want to disappoint the person who might be seeing you for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And how you basically become a hostage, not a hostage, but a prisoner within your hotel room, because that's the only place you can have a place where you can kick back, because as soon as you step out, as soon as you take the elevator down and those doors open, boom, you're in the thick of it and you're surrounded by people. Yeah, it's hard.
Going more on the expectations, Michael, and this is a quote that's also attributed to Joe DiMaggio, would always say, I never take a day off, because you never know when one kid in the crowd, that's the first and only time they'll ever see me play. Mm-hmm. So how can I go out and score 12 points?
Right.
Because, we're just playing the Wizards. Who cares? Yeah, but to some kid, that is their memory of you forever.
Right.
So be great always, and let that kid for the rest of his life say, I saw Michael Jordan play and he scored 47 points and didn't play the fourth quarter.
Hello, kid.
What did you think about the Ichiro story?
That was really interesting. I was unaware of that, and I thought the way he experienced it in terms of it was leaked during the game, and how he described the somberness that kind of fell over the stadium. And so then when Ichiro has his last at bat and grounds out, or on
a bang bang play.
Yeah, and how disappointing it is. And as he's saying it, I'm like, yeah, please let him just, have the throw to first be errant or slow or whatever, and just give it to him. And it's not what happened.
But I think that's the perfect example of being a baseball player. You fail way more than you succeed. Mm-hmm. And would it have been nice if his last at bat was a walk-off home run? Yeah, but that is the story for so few people.
Right.
So it's the saying is, Father Time is undefeated. At some point, everybody's going to be too old to do it. And it's crazy that Ichiro played as long as he did. I mean, he came over as a 27-year-old and then played 18 years in baseball, in Major League Baseball. And the numbers that he put up, I mean, his first 10 seasons, 200 or more hits with the Mariners, and setting records and, leading the league in hits for so many of those years, and the all-time record for most hits in a season. The things that he did were incredible. Knowing stuff about him personally, the Hall of Fame keeps track of what players show up at the museum aspect and the archives. And it's been said that during his playing career, nobody went to the Hall of Fame more than Ichiro. And he would just want to go and hold Lou Gehrig's bat.
Wow.
Because he wanted to feel connected to him.
Right.
And so if anybody has Ichiro's contact information out there, we'd love to have him stand in Shoeless Joe's house. But it shows the reverence for the game and his understanding and appreciation of the history and the greats. There's a reason he got to be where he was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just a fluke that he was this incredible athlete, which he was, but he studied the game and practiced it and tried to get better every single day and every single year. And that's how you get to be as good as he is at, something.
So he put in the years of hard work and was an overnight success.
Yeah.
We were talking about going to Seattle and having a layover there on a trip, and this was many years ago, and just having a little bit of time to go into the city and seeing a building that was just a full side of him, just like at the end of his swing, right? And it just spoke volumes because there was no one else there on a competing wall. It was him. He was that franchise, and the city adored him. We had some friends who lived there, and that was it. He raised up that whole franchise to be something, and something that city is still proud of.
The Mariners have had a strange history because in the early 90s when Griffey was there, the franchise was not doing well. And he was the bright spot,
right?
But they were getting ready to move, and the 95 playoff team saved that team from relocating. But then I think that was Alex Rodriguez's rookie year, and Randy Johnson was there. But after a couple of years, all those guys were gone, and now you had this resurgence of interest in the sport in that city, and then everybody was gone, and It's like, okay, well, now what?
Right. There's this void.
And here comes Ichiro and wins Rookie of the Year, MVP in the same season, 2001. And for the next decade plus, I mean, he is baseball in that city. And so, to this day, I mean, he's revered in Seattle.
I don't know what you said that just prompted this memory, but when you were showing me the bat flips video, one of the batters had a Twins uniform on that said Twins in English, and he hits one into the stands, and as the camera angle changes to be where is the ball going to land, and you see all the advertising in Korean, and it just gave me a flashback to the Tom Selleck movie.
Mr. Baseball?
Mr. Baseball. Because when you said he was Mr. Baseball, that's probably what got me there. But that's how ingrained that was. It sounds like Joey might need a list of baseball movies to be watching. If he's a newcomer to Field of Dreams, sounds like he might have some time on his hands to watch some. And that he would enjoy. And, there's the corny ones, but there are some that enhance your baseball experience. So anything with Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I really love Dances with Wolves. It's my favorite baseball movie. Tatanka.
Well, speaking of that, I liked that he has a ham spear obsession because growing up in the Chicago area, as a kid, Ham's beer was advertised all over the place, and that jingle, anybody who lived through that, the jingle is always going to be in the back of your mind, and it always had that undercurrent of Native American drums, and still to this day, the Native American drums where, I try to make a point to visit Native American sites because of my draw to the culture. But the drums are just so cool, and those commercials had that going throughout it. And I also liked that you asked what his walk-up song would be, and he right away had it ready. It was queued up, and it was Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas, and he got that right away.
Yeah, when he got to Chicago, I was bartending at Yaxie's in Wrigleyville, and we sold hams. And so he swung by to, I think he was going to a Cubs game that night or something, and so he came by, and he's like, he saw the beer tap with the Hams logo, the bear on the top, and he goes, "You guys serve hams?" I was like, "Sure do." And it's...
Hello, only guy who's ever been excited about seeing the hams.
No, it was funny because it was one of our top selling beers because, first of all, it was our cheapest beer. So anybody young who would come in and say, "What's your cheapest beer?" they get hams. But anybody over the age of 40 would see it and go, "Oh my God, I haven't had a ham since 1986.
Yes.
And then they would get one. And then they'd be like, "That's why I haven't had one since."
Well, there's that. It was good. It just had a great jingle.
Yeah.
And a funny cartoon line of the Goofy Bears doing goofy things.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
Ready for a road trip. Love listening to Joey. Hope he has safe travels and keeps on exploring and spreading his passion and being such a fantastic ambassador for the game of baseball. That is just mind-boggling that that's where he is.
Yeah, I think he really downplayed the impact that he has had on
internationally.
The sport.
Just unbelievable.
Travel Channel, if you're out there listening, BBC, send a camera crew, follow him around.
Baseball Brit.
Yep. Okay, so that's it. In the introduction to this episode, I mentioned a trivia question you can answer to win something. Here's how you can do that. First, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Shoeless Podcast. Then, find the pinned tweet at the top of our profile with the link to the Joey Mellows episode, which asks this week's trivia question. The answer to the trivia question was somewhere in the episode you just finished listening to. Retweet that tweet along with your answer, and we'll announce the winner in next week's episode. You don't have to be first, you just have to be right. And you have to be following us. We'll pick one person who answered correctly, and they'll get a pack of the 1919 Black Sox 25-card set that's available in the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum online store, along with an enamel pin which is modeled after the 1914 B18 felt blanket card featuring Joe Jackson. I've gotten some emails over the last few weeks asking me to explain the KBO. It's on TV and people are watching, but I think everyone just wants a little bit of a better understanding of exactly what they're watching. It's like when they used to show Australian rules football on ESPN super late at night in the 90s. I used to love watching that, but I had no idea what was really going on. And every time I felt like I was getting a handle on the rules and on the point structure, something would happen that didn't make sense to me, and I would question everything that I thought I knew. The internet wasn't super extensive back then like it is now, and there certainly wasn't anything like Twitter where you could immediately interact with people all over the globe. So I couldn't just ask people from Australia, "What's going on over there with this?" So I think I know exactly how Joey felt as he was starting to learn about baseball for the first time. A game that was foreign to him, where the broadcasters don't really take the time to describe or explain every little thing that's happening because they assume the people watching are already familiar with the sport and its rules. So since Joey's all about promoting interest in baseball, here's some key info about the Korean Baseball Organization, according to Joey, to help your viewing experience. The league was formed in 1982. There's 10 teams from 8 different cities, with the city of Seoul having 3 different teams. It's a 144-game season, with every team in the league playing the 9 other teams 16 times each. They use the universal DH. If a regular season game is tied after 12 innings, it goes in the record books as a tie. In the playoffs, they increase the limit to 15 innings, but a playoff game can still end in a tie. However, any playoff game ending in an official tie is replayed, thereby raising the possibility of a close series containing more than the scheduled 5 or 7 games. The top 5 teams of the 10 in the league qualify for postseason, with the lowest qualifying teams facing off in a step-ladder playoff system where each winner then faces the next highest team, culminating in the Korean series against the top-ranked team. So the 5th-place team plays the 4th-place team in a wildcard series. The 4th-place team starts that series with a 1-0 series lead and advances with a win or a tie, while the 5th-place team needs to win twice to advance. The winner of that series then faces the 3rd-place team in a best-of-5 series. The winner of that series then faces the 2nd-place team in another best-of-5 series. And then the winner of that series plays the 1st-place team in a best-of-7 for the KBO championship. There are cheerleaders and a cheermaster, and just an all-around more cheerful atmosphere, both literally and figuratively. Also, there are more off-speed pitches, more sidearm deliveries, more bunts, and more bat flips, all of which Joey obviously loves, and he thinks you will too. If you have questions about the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, about the podcast, or about anything else, you can reach out on social media or email me at shoelesspodcast@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer them in next week's episode. If you want to send in a video or audio recording of your questions so I can play it on the show, that's cool too. A lot of you have rated and reviewed my baseball history in the past couple weeks, and we're really thankful for that. Chasberg left a 5-star rating and said, "I am so happy I happened across the Instagram account for this show and got on board early because it is a treasure. Dan is a terrific interviewer and wise beyond his years. It helps that I felt an immediate connection as a similarly aged guy from the Chicago burbs, and he holds his own with all the guests. The segment with his mom is fun and heartfelt as well, and never feels cheesy or forced. A must-listen for baseball fans. I can't wait to see what guests are in store going forward." Thank you so much for those kind words. It's a huge help when you guys rate and review the show on whatever platform you choose to listen. 5-star ratings help our podcast get shown on more people's suggested podcast page, which means that more people will hear our show. It just takes a couple seconds of your time, but it really helps us a lot. And of course, liking us on social media, interacting with our posts, and sharing things with your friends is great too. No matter how you choose to support us, even if it's just by listening, we appreciate you being here. Until next time, I'm Dan Wallach, and this is my baseball history.